Plague Tale: Innocence came out, and this is a game by a studio called Asobo Studios, and I thought they were a new developer, but actually they've done a whole bunch of stuff, like some licensed stuff, and ironically enough, they did a Ratatouille game, um, and this is like one of their first. I think it's one of their first like totally original games, and if you're not familiar with it, it's this kind of medieval France. It's definitely alternate history because in a way because there's a lot of supernatural stuff going on, but basically it follows these two siblings, Amicia and Hugo, as they try to navigate their way through the French countryside, basically, that's been not only overrun with war between England and France, but also by this plague of like super terrible swarming rats that just consume basically any flesh that stands in their way. And they're also being chased by an Inquisition, which is trying to get a hold of Hugo, the younger brother, who has some sort of illness that is kind of kept under wraps for most of the game, exactly what the illness is, but they're trying to acquire him for some reason. And that's kind of like the central mystery of at least the first probably like half to 2/3 of the game, is like what is so special about Hugo that these people are after him. So you play as Amicia, and she's not too much older than her brother. I'd say she's probably about 13 or 14, and he's probably about 6 or 7. So this is a game that's dealing with very much dealing with children as the main characters, which you don't see too much in games. And they are leaning heavily into the storytelling in the game, and I think they do a pretty good job with it. If you want to read like a more in-depth review on it, you can check out my review on the website, voxelvoice.com. It's there right now. But I kind of wanted to talk to Leigh about it because he played quite a bit of it too, and feel like what his take is on it and how he liked it. I guess, yeah. I mean, you can, like I said, you can look at my review. I really liked it. I thought it did most things really well. The gameplay is a little stealth heavy and it's a little clunky in spots, but luckily it's not. It relies on it a little bit too much, especially near the end, in my opinion. But it's never. There's really only one way to get through all of the encounters, so it's just a matter of taking the advantages when you have them. So Leigh, what was your takeaway from the game? Did you end up finishing it?
No, I'm literally right at the end, I believe. Okay. I think I'm judging by the amount of pickups I have, because you get a grid of kind of collectibles that you collect through a game, and I've probably got like one slot left, so I'm assuming I've kind of not got much to do before I'm at the end.
Yeah. So without spoiling too much, do you remember what chapter you're on?
I can't remember the number. No.
Okay.
I've been quite a way past the revelation of why it's happening and how it's happening. If we put it like that.
Okay. Have any of the main characters left the scene?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah.
Right.
So I played quite a substantial bit of it.
Okay.
It looks like a relatively. I like the look of the atmosphere when you first see the promotional stuff. I like the look of the atmosphere, and you're going into sort of kind of probably kind of a little bit of gameplay and wandering, but kind of a narrative adventure mostly. And I got into it. I was completely engrossed by it. I think it's a fascinating game.
Yeah,
it has its problems.
They put a lot of money into the visuals. That's for sure.
Yeah,
It it looks like a bigger budget game than it probably is.
yeah,
And that goes a long way, especially when you're interacting with the characters are interacting and you're seeing
yeah.
these set pieces, and especially the rats,
Mm,
the way that they look and the way that they like form in a circle around you as you're carrying your torch because they're afraid of the fire. So that's really your only defense against them.
yeah. The way they do the rats as well, because it's kind of almost like apocalyptic the way they come up. It's almost like fantastical. They burst out of the ground to come and get you when they're trying to get towards you. These
Yeah,
rats, and you can kind of look around it and you can see, well, these rats aren't animated. They're just running around with like tails hanging out.
yeah,
But there's something about the way they just kind of go around like they're on like a wind up, like a clockwork.
yeah,
But you don't care because there's something unsettling about it because they've got piercing eyes and they kind of like lit up by I assume the
yeah,
light, and it's kind of it's very creepy. It's incredibly creepy.
yeah. It's
It has a very
like you said, each individual rat isn't even really animated with legs, but there's
no,
so many of them in there, so they pile up on each other so much. It's like like they almost look like a bunch of Tic Tacs.
yeah,
or rice spilling out of the walls and stuff like that. It
mm,
reminded me a lot of like water or sand, like
mm,
flowing out of holes in the ground and holes in the wall and stuff like
mm,
that. And
mm,
yeah, their eyes glow, and because they're afraid of the light,
mm.
you never really get a good close up look at them because you're either holding a
No,
torch and they're
mm,
forming a ring around you and they're constantly like in the periphery of the darkness, or
mm,
they're just swarming you in like some sort of cutscene where you die. So
mm,
you never really get like a close up look at a single one of the rats. So
yeah,
yeah, they put out a couple of videos about their what they call rat tech in the
mm,
game and how they do it. I haven't watched them, but if you're like interested in like how games are made and stuff like that, you
mm,
might want to take a look at that and see how
mm,
they made this work.
mm,
But yeah, the rats are horrifying. Right from
yeah,
the start, and they're pretty terrifying right up throughout. Like they don't really lose their edge. They do a good job of creating new ways to make them scary or just just interesting. Like they never
yeah.
quite. It's never like, oh man, the rats again or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
like, oh shit, the rats are back.
Well, they're not. Yeah, they're not constantly there, are they? They're not. It's kind of
No.
they know where to drop them in and take them out. You've got several sort of antagonists or
Hmm.
groups of antagonists that come in and out of the games, and they know when to drop. Because obviously, kind of the rat thing is also a puzzle element to the game, isn't it? Trying to work your way through it by using
Hmm.
you get a slingshot that you could kind of drop kind of flaming chandeliers and to make them split, and you can make your way through the thing and
Yeah.
stuff like that. It does
Make paths through.
yeah. There's a surprising amount of combat in there. Well, I thought it doesn't work
Yeah,
perfectly.
I guess you'd call it combat. Um,
Hmm.
I guess there are certain points where they're kind of like, I guess you'd call it the boss fights, where you have to
Hmm.
deal with a usually a single enemy where you're
Hmm.
taking them down. But no, I guess near the end there are points where there's dudes running at you, and you have to take them down.
Or
Um,
without wishing to spoil too much, the camp when you're in the camp looking for Hugo
yeah.
with one of your friends and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
You can choose to do it both ways. It gives you the option to do it both, which I did also didn't expect for such a narrative adventure.
Yeah, there are definitely points where you have to kill, and there are a lot of open-ended areas where you kind of you can or you can't, and usually it's a little bit more difficult if you choose not to, because you have to worry about, bodies being spotted and stuff like that. But and I mentioned it in the review, I always felt like I always wanted to take the non-kill route. Not because there's a meter or it's going to affect the end of my game or anything like that, because there's none of that. The story is what it is, no matter what you do. There's no like renegade or Paragon meter like in Mass Effect or something like that. But because of the character development, because like Amicia is like such a well-developed character and is, no pun intended, innocent, you don't, I never felt like it was right for me to just go on a murder spree with her slingshot, right?
She has regrets when she first has to kill somebody, so then for you to continue to do that.
Right,
You try and roleplay it, don't you, in a weird way? Yeah. Even though it doesn't require you to. Yeah,
and those are my favorite types of morality meters. I think we've gotten past the point where, we have a visible morality meter, and that really works out. I think like The Witcher 3 did a very good job of having like dotting out these kind of choices you have to make, but it isn't clear that you're actually making these choices that are going to affect the final outcome. And that's the kind of stuff I like. And honestly, it kind of comes down to literally affecting how I play the game. So like Dishonored, for instance, I don't like those games because I know if I kill too many people, I'm going to get like a quote unquote bad ending. And
you're going to get played,
I don't enjoy the stealth in those games. I just don't like it. So I just bounced off of them because I was like, well, I'm just going to get a bad ending, and that's not the ending I want, but they're making me do this because I don't like playing the game that they want me to play in order to get the good ending or whatever.
Ironically, a set of games where you can summon rats to eat people.
Right, yeah. Right. Yeah.
Bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I was saying, it's a really well done game from like the scope of the project. Like they I feel like they knew what their limitations were and their strengths, and they leaned into them. Versus like when we were talking about earlier with like Fate to Silence or they're kind of like reaching beyond their bounds, but they seem Asobo with A Plague Tale seems to have narrowed in on exactly what they can do, and they set out to do it, and I think they pulled it off. The story is like I said, it concludes very well, and it is. Don't go in expecting this to be like a historically accurate representation of like the bubonic plague or something like that, because that's not what this is. They're using the imagery of something like that, but they are taking liberties with the source material and kind of running off in their own direction with it. And they lean into it. It isn't like they keep waffling back and forth. They right from the start they tell you, they make it clear that this isn't your great grandfather's plague. Derek, I know you have not played it. Do you have any questions, any concerns that you want to raise before we move on to something that we can all talk about?
I guess as far as like the story goes, so they keep it going along pretty well without it like kind of getting dry in spots.
Oh yeah. It's a very it never lets up, basically.
Nice.
Like with Leigh was saying, where they keep like it has a very good balance of like, okay, now you're dealing with these human characters that you have to fight, and then they throw the rats back in, like almost at
Gotcha.
a point where you'd be like, oh my god, I totally forgot about these rats. It actually reminds me a lot of the Flood from Halo.
Gotcha.
And I know people are back and forth on their love of the Flood, but it's kind of that in terms of pacing, where you'll have your missions where you'll just be fighting the Covenant, and then they'll put the Flood back in at a certain point, and you'll have some Flood missions and back and forth like that.
Nice.
And even like the behavior of the rats reminds me a little bit of that, where they just kind of swarm around, and it's kind of like a feeling of being overwhelmed in that sense. It's on PC, PS4, and Xbox One. I guess it's $50 on console and $45 on PC for some reason. I don't know why they do pricing changes like that. I was a little, when I first started up, I think me and you both, Lee, were a little like, is this really worth that high of an asking price? And by the end, I was like, yeah, this is. It's not a super long game. You're looking at probably between 8 to 10 hours if you get all of the collectibles, like 10 hours if you seek out all of the collectibles. A little bit less if you just run through the main story, because it is pretty linear. But the quality of the content, I think, justifies the price tag.
Yeah, I feel like it's something I would probably play through again for the story, to appreciate the story again. It's very well.
Yeah, I think it would be a good, at least in my particular case, it would be a good one where I'm gonna like go back in a couple of years and replay and feel like I'm kind of like starting in fresh, because I'll forget a lot of details and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All right, so that was A Plague Tale: Innocence. Thank you for joining us on this very special episode of Voxel Viewpoint. If you'd like to hear or see more, please consider subscribing to us on your favorite podcast app, subscribing to us on YouTube, or visiting voxelvoice.com, where all of our great content comes together in one place. Also check out the Voxel Voice Facebook group, where you can join in on the discussion with a great, like-minded community.